It's my great pleasure to be up here today and spend some time unfolding and unpacking and bringing to life this concept of applied intelligence. As Darcy mentioned, this is stuff that has been culminating throughout my career, and it shouldn't take me any less than 3 hours to convey all of that to you today. No, seriously, I have limited time to share, but I do hope to sort of bring to bear a couple of key concepts around this applied intelligence that we keep speaking to. The first and the foremost thing I want to start with is what's on this slide is it is all about putting the business in the driver's seat. I started my career in the area of artificial intelligence right about the same time Scott Zoldi did. Join me, Scott, in the duration of 30 years in this business. And at the time, it wasn't ready for the prime use. It wasn't ready because the compute wasn't there. The business usability wasn't there, but it offered a tremendous amount of potential. So if we look at history, and I'm a real big fan of history, beside the fact that I have a voracious appetite to understand, you can actually learn from history, things that have gone well or things that have gone bad. Using that sort of context-setting approach, if we look back, there's a fascinating parallel between where we are in the tech revolution and the industrial revolution. Right now, we're in the thick of the technical revolution, but the industrial revolution started a very, very long time ago. And if you're not familiar, it started with the iron plow. Well, what does the iron plow have to do with the Industrial Revolution? The trigger of the iron plow actually made it easier to produce more farm goods with less resources. This put people out of a job. Cities formed. They started seeking jobs in factories. There's a new culture evolved. The first part of the Industrial Revolution was the automated loom. The automated loom sort of helped build clothing at a lower cost. But if you look through the Industrial Revolution, as time went on, it started accelerating to where the assembly line became a key part of it. And eventually, you put robotics on it. I had the pleasure of speaking to Pat Carr 2 days ago. I don't know if they're in the room, but it's fascinating listening to what they were describing as the automated robots to build the cabs, in the trucks that they actually build as custom built, each of their orders. It's incredible to see sort of from the Industrial Revolution of starting with a plow where we are today, but it took a duration of time. We're in a status here where that duration is highly collapsed. Every last one of us is holding a personal computer in our hands or in our pockets or in our briefcase that has 100,000 times the compute power of what put us on the moon. It changes digital for us forever. Then you introduce something like COVID, and all of a sudden it accelerates again. Let's take a look at some statistics around what is actually driving this. This was a study done by Accenture. Pre-COVID, the study was done to see why certain organizations were succeeding in digital transformation over others. This laggard versus leaders approach. It was identified that they were growing 2 times as fast as the laggards community. And in that study, they looked at a lot of different parameters, but one of the parameters they looked at was the trust of their data. Did they actually trust the data that they were using to make decisions or drive outcomes? Or their machine learning and analytics. 97% of the leaders said they trusted that data. The next thing that they looked at was decoupling their architecture. Said differently, were you moving to a cloud? Or were you on a traditional data center based approach? Were you embracing what cloud could offer from breaking up your systems into piece parts and actually driving more agility into your organization? The next one on the list was about adopting a platform. Platforms about 5 years ago were just coming into being. Today, everybody has a platform, right? pretty much. But to be a platform, you actually have to have some unique characteristics. I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. But platform adoption was then followed by orienting around artificial intelligence. But it's artificial intelligence decisions. They immediately began to add that word decisions to the artificial intelligence. And it's this combination that you heard from Mike Giliarty yesterday and throughout this conference that sort of is the unlocking element of this. When you get to actually looking at these numbers in pandemic, what was projected to go to 5x growth actually occurred in COVID. So the promise of being able to respond digitally catapulted the businesses that were under the leader category here because they had the outcomes. It's these outcomes that are sort of key to driving our businesses in a digital world. So you can look at this from a traditional perspective, right? How do you drive your business? It's around your policies. It's around your market pressures. It's about the strategy that you lay out of where your organization wants to go. These are the elements that have historically driven your business. Everybody says, well, wait a minute, we have all this data. Let's use the machine to figure out how to make better decisions. So let's turn to the machine to actually help us make these decisions. You know, Scott and I were talking about this. Not much has changed in the last 30 years around what's actually behind this machine learning and artificial intelligence. The techniques, they're the same. And I see heads shaking out there. Everybody understands that. If you've been in this world long enough, you know it really hasn't changed. What's changed is the fact that it actually has become possible to attain the goals and objectives that machine learning promised when they were incepted, because compute is here, storage is here. But as Scott will point out, and I'm going to touch on later, it goes a little bit beyond just compute and slapping a machine on some data to figure it out. But in our world, right, there's a separation between the bottoms-up data-driven approach and the top-down business-driven approach, and the two worlds aren't coming together. You can't rely solely on the machine. You can't rely solely on making good, solid business decisions. Those two things have to come together. So in order to make that happen, there's a couple of things you need to start with. First is a premise. You need to start with a premise that data by itself without a decision is a distraction. This is the way Gartner puts it. We actually agree. FICO has been doing this for a very long time. I have one of the best jobs in the world. I get to actually engage with such a wide diversity of customers, solving problems that range everywhere from ESG-related matters all the way through to driving business outcomes, and everything in between. And I also get to look back over the history of FICO and find the patterns of what we're doing. This is not new for FICO. What's new is we're providing the enablement of connecting these things for you in ways that were not possible before. Anybody who's used our fraud systems or our triad systems or our origination systems, you've already been combining analytics and decisioning. But you've been relying on us to do that. Now we're going to enable you to do that. And now you can use it in so many more ways than you have in the past. So to accomplish that, there's a couple of things we need to do. 4, in fact, probably more, but let's start with these 4. We need to connect the data and the insights that you get out of that data into the actionable decisions and measure the outcomes and close that loop so we can continuously improve. And this is where putting the business in the driver's seat is essential. This cannot be reliant on a data scientist person or a data engineer or an IT individual. Of course, they contribute to these worlds, but the business needs to be in control here. That's a fundamental premise on which we start. If we drill into this, this is bringing the world of the machine and the human together in cooperation. I've been in a couple of consults this week already so far, and this is a reoccurring question that comes up. How can you collaborate across the organization, between lines of business, between functional? It's the same collaboration here between the machine and human. You have seen us actually spend time around these things we call capabilities. And I want to look and call your attention to the bottom left, where it's business user focused. This is a fundamental principle. There's a little bit of confusion about what we mean by capabilities here. Oftentimes I hear people use the word tools. It's not a tool. There's a very big difference between a set of tools and a platform. So I was struggling with how to actually bring this to life. So I'm going to use an example, a personal example. So one of my hobbies is woodworking. I learned at a young age from my father, and we grew up on a farm. And I farmed for far too many years. Decided that it was much better to use my head than my back. And so I applied myself in studies. So the farm was shut down, and we had an old milk house. And I decided that I was going to convert that into a wood shop. Jack the roof up, put a beam down the center, open floor plan, and I spent time designing the flow of my wood shop, moving wood from one end to the other end where it would actually be finished. I dropped in lighting, I dropped in electrical, I dropped in dust collection, I dropped in equipment, all kinds of equipment across the process. And then I had my wood shop. And my wood shop allowed me to take raw wood and apply my artistic talent to come out the other end with a piece that was handcrafted. Is that wood shop filled with tools? Yes, but it's not a tool. It's a platform. Because I had the lighting in the right place, because I had dust collection. Has anybody done any woodworking? When you start cutting wood, you make a lot of dirt. The last thing you want to do is deal with that dirt. So getting that out of the way, just like in the FICO platform, we take your digital exhaust, we get it out of the way, but we don't lose it. It has value. That's our ADM. So these capabilities, they're not tools. They work together in unison, and it brings to life the ability for you to do what you need to do to drive your business. And the best part about this is you use what you want to use. It cost me a little bit of money to set up my electrical and my air pressure and my dust collection, but when I was done, I had all of the capabilities I needed in my wood shop to do anything I want. Do I use them every time? Nope. I use them when I need them. Same principle applies. And in the cloud world, you pay for what you use. This brings about the enablement of this decision-centric, outcome-driven approach where you can incrementally move into and use what you want. Here's the most fascinating thing to me in these conversations that I get to enjoy. Almost every last one of you starts in a different place, and your journey is a little different, but you're all looking for the same thing, and you all need the same thing. I wish I could actually say I was, brilliant enough to foresee all of this. It has nothing to do with it. We've been doing this for a long time. We just have not exposed it in a way that has driven your ability to consume it as you need it. And that is the promise of our platform. So that's great, all this capability stuff, but why does it matter? Like, okay, platform this, capability this. What is actually coming out the other end? So somebody asked me that. They're like, hey, it's great to hear all these customers speak about what they're doing with the platform. This is awesome. But where's they getting the value from? So you can actually spend some time talking to each one of you, and I encourage you to actually network with each other and do that, just that. Compare notes. You'll learn things from that just as I have, and it probably will help you. It will help you. But when you look across enough of them, you start to see the patterns, right? And so it's those patterns that I want to share with you now, right? Because if you think about them in this concept of patterns, as you approach your next use case for where you're going to drive business value, you can apply these patterns and get the value that every last one of our platform customers are getting. And they're actually not that difficult to grasp or understand. There's 5 of them here. There are more, but these are the 5 most prevalent sort of business benefits. The first one and the most important one here from my consideration is the composability of this. It's important because the business decides what they compose it with. I've had a discussion about application fraud. How many of you actually have application fraud needs or an application fraud system in place? Raise your hand. Okay, keep them up. How many of you use rules in that process? Keep your hands up. How many of you build an analytic? Keep your hand up. How many of you use hot list lookups? How many of you actually use external data verification? How many of you actually use social network analysis? Okay, you see what happened there? 2 hands, 3 hands, 4 hands, sorry, 5 hands, I saw you, left standing. The beautiful part about this is you don't have to use all of it. Choose what you want and incrementally grow into it and add value. The second beautiful part about this is if you are using social network analysis, you get an ancillary benefit from that digital exhaust. You actually begin to find patterns between your customers that you can use to inform how you engage with them. While you're just looking for fraud, it's actually telling you how to do other things in your business. Composability, management of the assets. The management of the assets here are actually a key part of this because as you balloon and grow, you have more functional, more lines of business, this gets complicated. How many of you are CROs? Raise your hand, please. Okay? How many of you can actually find out exactly what version of models you're using, where you're using them, when you're using them? Keep your hands up. Yeah, they all go down. Oh, we got one. I want to talk to you. See me afterwards. This is one of the hardest problems to keep track of, not only from a regulatory perspective, but from a business perspective. Flexibility of architecture. You have optionality here. You're not stuck to one specific thing. Open standards are a key part of what we offer from a platform, and it's a given today. Context enrich, I mentioned that. It's sort of this ability to grow and understand the consumer. And then finally, outcome aware. And this is the primary business driver, not the primary business use. But the primary business driver, different from the use, is you own the changes to your strategy and how you approach it. The ability to measure that outcome, that's your business driver. And they need to be brought together. If they're not, you're only getting partial of what you can get out of the potential. So as I said, I have to actually give you a snapshot into this world of applied intelligence in less than 3 hours. 15 minutes is what we were given. And I very much appreciate your participation here this week and for the consultations that I've had, because it's always great to continue to get that feedback as we go down this journey.